Hello and welcome to Grants and Cooperative Agreements 102, an overview of NASA grants environment. I'm Christiane Diallo, a senior analyst with the NASA Office of Procurement, Grants Policy and Compliance. And before I get into the objectives of this training, I would like to share that NASA recently released Grants 101, which focused on an overview of the federal financial assistance. That training discusses the different types of federal financial assistance, the key players that are involved within those processes, as well as the policies and regulations that govern grants and cooperative agreements. So if you have not watched the video, I encourage you to visit our YouTube channel and type in NASA Grants 101. Secondly, I would like to point that closed captions for this video is available in multiple languages. To choose your preferred language, simply click the settings option located on the bottom right of your screen next to the closed caption button. And once there, click on the subtitles and then select the language of your choice. For Grants 102, we shift the focus on the NASA grants landscape. Over the course of this training, I will provide you with some insights on NASA's grants and cooperative agreements environment. I'll delve into the roles and responsibilities of the key players engaged in managing NASA awards. I'll discuss the various activities that occur throughout the grant's life cycle. I will address audit requirements that is applicable to both NASA grant recipients and NASA personnel. And lastly, I'll highlight some key components that contribute to the effective management of grants. So how does grant support NASA's mission? Well, NASA has a strategic plan that is fully reviewed and updated at least every 3 years. The latest version of NASA's strategic plan was released in fiscal year 2022, and a link to that plan is provided on this slide for your reference. Within that plan, NASA identified 4 strategic goals to accomplish its mission and contribute to maintaining leadership in space, aeronautics, climate research, and innovation while driving economic growth. The strategic goals, as well as their corresponding objectives, are outlined in this table and discussed in more detail in the fiscal year 2022 plan. It is important, though, to note that grants plays a pivotal role in advancing these strategic goals and objectives. They do so by providing the necessary financial support, the expertise, and resources to drive the various initiatives. For example, grants may fund research projects that contribute to unraveling the mysteries of the universe, fund projects that enable efficient and safe travel to the moon and Mars, as well as funding educational projects that engages students in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics fields so that these students may become future scientists and engineers. On an annual basis, NASA expends more than $1 billion in grants and cooperative agreements to fund research, technology demonstrations, and STEM engagement initiatives. This funding results in approximately more than 2,000 new awards being issued to a diverse range of recipients, including universities, nonprofit organizations, and for-profit organizations. Universities make up 90% of award recipients, while nonprofit represents 6%, and for-profits organizations account for 4% of award recipients. At any given time, there is an average of 8,000 active awards. These awards are funded by NASA mission directorates, with the science mission directors funding at least 80% of NASA awards. NASA grant programs are managed within the 4 mission directorates and the Office of STEM Engagement. The directorates and program offices are responsible for identifying funding, soliciting, evaluating, and selecting project proposals, and ensuring that project goals and deliverable requirements are met. This graphic highlights the various programs that are funded by the mission directorates. The Science Mission Directors, or SMD, is the largest funding organization and funds projects from astrophysics research to lunar discovery and exploration. The OSTEM, or Office of STEM Engagement, funds projects that is related to STEM education and outreach. The Space Technology Mission Directorate, or STMD, funds projects related to space technology research, small spacecraft technology, and flight opportunities. The Exploration Systems Development Mission Directorate funds projects related to human landing systems, exploration ground system, and human surface mobility. Programs within the Space Operations Mission Directorates include human research, space communications and navigation, communication services, and human spaceflight operations. You can find detail about each of these programs on the Directorate fact sheet, which is available on the Grants Policy and Compliance website. As mentioned in previous slides, NASA supports a diverse range of projects and initiatives spanning from research, technology development, education, and collaboration with various entities. The amount of these awards ranges anywhere between $70,000 to over $5 million. This table highlights just a few examples of grants and cooperative agreements awards that has been issued by NASA Mission Directorate. You can visit the usaspending.gov website to access detailed information on all awards issued by NASA. And in case you're not familiar with usaspending.gov, it is a website that provides the public access to detailed information about federal contracts, grants, loans, and other types of financial assistance that is provided by the U.S. government. The detailed information of these awards includes the recipient's name, the award amount, the type of award, and the description of each of those awards. This slide outlines the roles and responsibilities of the key players engaged in managing NASA grants awards. The first is the Grants Policy and Compliance, which is the office that I represent. Our office is responsible for developing agency-wide grant award management policies. We're responsible for ensuring that NASA is compliant with federal regulations, such as the 2 CFR Part 200 and the 2 CFR Part 1800. In addition, we are responsible for coordinating responses to award-related audits and inspections. We provide technical assistance and training, and we respond to the Office of Management and Budget and congressional inquiries and requests that is related to grants. The NASA grant officers have several exclusive responsibilities in addition to issuing new awards or amendments to existing awards. They give the final approval to changes that are made to an award, such as changes to a principal investigator, budget revisions, changes in an award scope of work. They make the final determination on whether a cost is allowable, allocable, reasonable, and necessary for the recipient's expenditures that are charged to the award. The grant officers also have the responsibility for routinely monitoring awards to ensure that the recipient is compliant with regulations and the award's terms and conditions. Finally, the grant officers are responsible for terminating an award if the recipient has violated federal regulations or the award's terms and conditions. The mission directorates or the program offices assign a technical officer to each of the award to be the subject matter expert and primary project point of contact. The responsibilities of a technical officer include monitoring the award to make sure that the recipient is meeting the project's goals and objectives and deliverables. They are also responsible for reviewing performance reports and providing feedback to the recipient. They address the recipient's technical questions that is related to the funded award. They perform monitoring activities and conduct meetings with the recipients and also concur with the grant officers on any changes to the award, again, such as a PI change or scope of work change. Included on this slide is a list of websites that applicants may use to identify NASA funding opportunities. The first is sam.gov, which serves multiple purposes. It provides a listing of federal grants programs. Applicants may search the assistance listings in sam.gov to find relevant NASA grant programs that are of interest to their organization. Each assistance listing provides detailed information about the objective of the program, the types of organizations that are eligible to apply, as well as the application process. The second is grants.gov. This is a website that provides federal funding opportunities where applicants can use to search for NASA funding opportunities based on specific criteria, such as the eligibility requirement and the funding type. The third is the NASA Integrated Review and Evaluation System, also known as INSPIRES. In addition to grants.gov, NASA uses INSPIRES to post funding opportunities as well as collect and review proposals. Any entity that is interested in applying for a federal grant must first register in sam.gov and obtain a Unique Entity Identifier, or UEI. This ensures that the entity is legitimate, eligible, authorized, and compliant with federal regulations. sam.gov provides a step-by-step process on how to register and apply for a UEI. Once you obtain the UEI, we recommend that you create an account in grants.gov and Inspires so that you can search for funding opportunities as well as get alerts on opportunities that align to your organization's interests. Once your organization identifies an award that they're eligible for, they can then submit an application through grants.gov or Inspires. The next few slides covers the award management lifecycle at NASA, which is made up of 4 phases: the pre-award, the award, the post-award, and the closeout. As a grant application and grant award moves through these phases, different activities and actions occur. It is important to note that award recipients, technical officers, and grant officers all have a unique role in each of the phases. The pre-award phase begins with choosing proposals for funding. NASA can select one of 3 ways to fund a project proposal. The first is open competition, which is NASA's preferred method of obtaining and evaluating proposals. Open competition allows for NASA to solicit public proposals and evaluate them based on merit. Open competition notice of funding opportunities or NOFOs are posted to Inspires and grants.gov for at least 60 calendar days. The second option is the single source award, which is issued to a specific entity that has unique qualification or when the circumstances surrounding the project necessitate the use of a non-competitive award. The third option is unsolicited proposal, which is a proposal that an entity voluntarily submits to NASA without a request from NASA. Unsolicited proposals may be funded if several conditions are met. 1, it must be relevant to a NASA's mission. Second, the proposed cost must be reasonable and realistic. And lastly, the proposal must not be in response to a current or pending notice of funding opportunity. Now that we have discussed the methods by which NASA may obtain proposals, let's discuss what must be included in a proposal package. Award proposals must contain several standard components. These include a cover page, which is automatically generated in Inspires, table of contents, a scientific, technical, or management plan, references and citations, biographical sketches for key personnel, and a description of a current and pending support, statements of commitment and letters of support, the proposal budget, a description of facilities and equipment, and a table of personnel and work effort must be included as well. More information of these requirements is also available in the NASA Proposals Guide. Prior to submitting a proposal in Inspires, applicants must first attest to the accuracy of federal government-wide certifications and representations in SAM.gov and NASA-specific certifications, assurances, and agreements in Inspires. Certifications and representations cover issues such as compliance with U.S. statutory and public policy requirements, conflicts of interest, whistleblower protections, discrimination, and many more. All proposals submitted to NASA receive an administrative review, a technical and programmatic evaluation, and a financial review by a grant officer. As a matter of policy and practice, proposals submitted are principally reviewed by panels composed of the proposer's professional peers who have been screened in advance for conflicts of interest. In addition, single source and unsolicited proposals require a merit review, possibly with a peer review panel. However, single source and unsolicited proposals exceeding the Simplify acquisition threshold, which is currently $250,000, require evaluation by at least 3 peer reviewers. More information on proposal evaluation is available on the NASA Grant and Cooperative Agreement Manual, as well as the NASA Proposals Guide. We've learned that each award lifecycle has its own distinctive actions. In the second lifecycle phase, a grant officer processes the award by conducting a budget review to check that proposed costs are allowable, allocable, and reasonable. They perform a pre-award risk assessment. They negotiate with the potential recipient if necessary, and they also prepare the award terms and conditions prior to issuing the award package to the recipient. As mentioned previously, before issuing the award, the grant officer reviews the proposed budget to verify that costs are allowable, allocable, and reasonable. Some costs are never allowed, such as those for alcoholic beverages, costs incurred by institutions of higher education for alumni activities, uncollectible debts, goods or services for personal use, lobbying costs, and costs that are not necessary for the project performance. A full list of allowable and unallowable costs is published in a 2 CFR 200 Subpart E cost principles. Note that for-profit entities must adhere to the cost principles that is outlined in the Federal Acquisition Regulations rather than those found in 2 CFR 200. The grant officer conducts a pre-award risk assessment before making an award to the applicant. The assessment will determine a potential award recipient risk of fraud, waste, and abuse. A risk assessment tool is used to evaluate the recipient against administrative, performance, and financial indicators and assigns a risk determination of low, medium, or high risk. Recipients who receive a medium or high risk will, at the grant officer's discretion, have additional terms and conditions applied to their award. The third phase of the award life cycle is the post-award phase. This phase is when the recipient begins the work they apply for and receive federal funding to complete. Recipients must carry out the award in compliance with the award terms and conditions, 2 CFR 200, 2 CFR Part 1800, and other applicable regulations, including post-award reporting requirements. For example, the Federal Financial Report or the Standard Form SF-425 is submitted quarterly in the HHS Payment Management System within 30 days following the end of each quarter or the calendar year. The SF-425 shows how much funding the recipient has drawn down, expended, and also has remaining in their bank account. Aside from the SF-425, which is submitted in PMS, other required reports are emailed to the awards grant officer and technical officer. These required reports include a performance report, which is due 60 days before the award anniversary date, a final SF-425, and performance report due within 120 days of the end of the awards period of performance, and any additional required reports that is outlined in the awards terms and conditions, such as the new technology summary report. Certain award recipient activities during award performance require prior written approval from a NASA grant officer. These activities can affect the award scope, the budget, key personnel, or other aspects of the award. A full list of prior approval requirements is available in 2 CFR 200 Section 407. Note that NASA research awards are subject to NASA standard terms and conditions, as well as the research terms and conditions which are maintained by the National Science Foundation. Some of the prior approval requirements in 2 CFR 200 Section 407 are waived for awards that are subject to the research terms and conditions. Most award recipients are paid on an advance basis, which means that funds are requested and deposited before costs are incurred. Recipients request funding through the payment management system as needed and generally do not have to submit invoices or receipts to support drawdown requests. There is no limit to how often recipients can request funds from PMS. However, the standard Form 425 must be submitted in PMS before a recipient can access funds. Recipients must also establish procedures to minimize the time elapsing between the receipt of funds from NASA and the disbursement of those funds to the recipient's vendors. In cost sharing or cost matching, some recipients are required or voluntarily offer to contribute their own funds to the award. NASA's program offices determine if cost sharing is required on their awards. If so, the cost share requirement is explicitly stated in the Notice of Funding Opportunity. Contributed funds must be reported on the recipient's quarterly standard Form 425, as failure to make the cost share contribution could result in a reduced award amount, a withheld payment, or termination of the award. When necessary and with the grant officer prior approval, recipients can issue subgrants or sub-cooperative agreements on their awards. An entity that issues a sub-award is called a pass-through or a prime recipient. Prime and sub-award recipients follow the same rules and regulations, such as the 2 CFR 200, 2 CFR 1800, and the prime awards terms and conditions. When a sub-award is issued, the prime recipient's responsibilities include drafting the official subaward documents, conducting a pre-award risk assessment, ensuring that NASA's terms and conditions flow down to the subaward recipient, reviewing financial and performance reports, taking corrective action if the subaward recipient is non-compliant with the rules and regulations, and closing out the award once the activities have concluded. The 2 CFR 200 requires recipients using award funds to purchase equipment to maintain adequate equipment records, conduct a physical inventory at least once every 2 years, and maintain a control system to prevent loss, damage, or theft. They must also submit an annual and final inventory report listing equipment purchased with their award funds to the grant officer and their industrial property officers. Note that some NASA award recipients are exempted from these requirements per the 2 CFR 1800 Section 312, which vests the title to equipment acquired with federal funds in nonprofit institutions of higher education and nonprofit organizations whose primary purpose is to conduct scientific research without further obligation to NASA, including reporting requirements. The 2 CFR 200 also requires recipients to maintain written procedures and internal controls. These procedures include those to determine permissible costs charged to an award and minimize the time between funding drawdown and expenditures. They are also required to maintain written standards of conduct that cover organizational conflicts of interest in procurement transactions. At last, they must maintain internal controls that provide reasonable assurance that a recipient can comply with federal statutes, regulations, and award terms and conditions. The fourth and final phase of the award lifecycle is the closeout phase. Closeout occurs after the end of the award's period of performance. In this phase, the award is formally closed out as NASA concludes administrative actions and required work has been completed. The recipient, the grant officer, and technical officer all have a role in the closeout process. A few conditions that can prevent an award from closing out include a pending litigation, whether an allowable, allocable, or reasonable payment have not been dispersed to the recipient, or if funding has not been deobligated from the award. Now let's discuss the roles in the closeout process, starting with the recipient's role. Within 120 days of the award's period of performance expiration, the recipient submits their final SF-425, their performance report, inventory report, and invention report if required, and other reports required by the terms and conditions to the grant officer and the technical officer. The recipient also liquidates all obligations incurred under the award and promptly returns unexpended funds to NASA via the HHS payment management system. The award recipient must maintain all financial records, supporting documents, statistical records, and other pertinent records for 3 years from the date of the final financial report submission. NASA is also required to maintain award documents in accordance with the NASA Records Retention Schedule. Now that I've explained the award lifecycle, let's discuss single audit requirements. A single audit is an independent examination of an organization's financial statements and federal award programs to ensure compliance with federal regulations and guidelines. Single audits are conducted for recipients that expend $750,000 or more during the award recipient's fiscal year. Recipients that expend funding for only one federal program may elect to have a program-specific audit, which adheres to the same regulations as a single audit. Unlike a financial statement audit, single audits and program-specific audits are an extensive review of the recipient's internal controls, their financial records, expenditures, and their compliance with the federal statutes, regulation, and award terms and conditions. Both NASA and award recipients are responsible for certain audit-related actions. Recipients are responsible for arranging the audit and ensuring that it is completed within the required time frame. And if prior approval is received, audit costs may be charged to the award. Once the award is completed, recipients must ensure that the audit report is submitted to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse website within the earlier of 30 calendar days after the auditor's report is received, or 9 months after the audit period ends. Finally, the recipient must take corrective actions to ensure that all audit findings are addressed. As for NASA's responsibilities, we monitor the Federal Audit Clearinghouse to verify whether the recipients have submitted their single audit reports within the designated time frame. Failure to submit their reports on time may subject the recipients to corrective actions on their current award until the report is submitted. Reports that contain findings are examined to determine if the recipient has taken corrective action. If corrective action has not been taken, the grant officer requests for the recipients to provide those corrective action plan and issues a management decision letter accordingly. Effective grants management is essential in ensuring the success of a grant project. Here are a few key components in ensuring that success. The first is budgeting and financial management. Recipients must develop realistic and detailed budget that accounts for every expenditure that is tied to the project. They must monitor expenses by conducting regular checks to ensure that actual expenses align to the approved budget and implementing financial controls to prevent any fraud, waste, or abuse. There are several regulations that govern grants. Recipients must adhere to these regulations as well as terms and conditions that are placed on their award. Understanding and complying with the regulations and terms and conditions will prevent recipients from having their grants terminated or face legal action. Recipients must also ensure that changes to the project scope or direction have the proper approvals. Grant recipients must also have a system in place to monitor the progress of their project against the goals and milestones and make sure that any deviation from the project plan is promptly addressed. They must ensure that progress reports are accurate and submitted in a timely fashion. And finally, it is important for recipients to maintain documentation for all project activities. This includes financial records, progress reports, and essential email communications, as these documentations are necessary for audit and reporting purposes. This concludes our training on Grants 102, an overview of NASA grants environment. I want to thank you for tuning in, and I hope that you found the information valuable and insightful. Listed on this slide is a few links related to the materials that were covered throughout this presentation. The links are also provided in the description of this video. Also, I would like to encourage you to subscribe to the NASA Grants and Cooperative Agreements YouTube playlist, where you can view additional videos on grants-related topics. Thank you again for your interest in NASA grants.